Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks Max for having me. This is an amazing crowd, a lot of people, and it's only my third or fourth 4-hour work week meetup myself. So I'm pretty excited to talk to you today, and I hope you find this really useful. My name is Johannes, and what I want to talk about today is how we built a mobile app business without employees to 6 figures profit in 2 years. When I speak about we, I speak about myself and my brother, who is also in the audience sitting there. So if you have any questions for later, you can also talk to him. All right, so let me start by introducing myself and talking a little bit about my story from corporate to appreneur or app entrepreneur. I was working as a business development executive at Zalando before I became an entrepreneur. And I read the 4-Hour Workweek, I read Tim Ferriss's blog, and as probably many of you as well, I became increasingly dissatisfied with being an employee, not having so much freedom on what I wanted to work on, choosing what would make me happy. And so I was constantly thinking about, okay, how could I change my situation? What could be the next step? What kind of business idea could I have? What could I do? And I was discussing that a lot with my brother. And then in May of 2012, I had my epiphany, which was actually by reading the 4-Hour Workweek blog, because there was a guest post on the blog by a guy called Chad Morita, and he was talking about his app empire. He was talking about how he had a pretty bad car accident, how he was lying in the hospital, and he was rethinking his life and restarting his business, and he came up with this idea of working on mobile apps. And he built a pretty big business and sold it for 7 figures, I think. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. Like mobile apps, this sounds really cool. I have a smartphone myself, I use them. And this is exactly what I'm looking for when I'm looking at business ideas. Because coming from something like Zalando, a really big company, I was looking for something that would be really lean, something that you could do with really very few employees or maybe even zero, something that wouldn't require huge funding, that wouldn't have physical products, no big customer service, logistics, product returns, all these kind of things. So I got into apps. I talked to my brother about it, and we started working on apps. And so what happened was we got into this more. And let me explain the situation a little bit about what our business is right now so that you can better understand what I'm talking about. Right now, we have an app publishing company. And what I mean by that is that we're not developing apps for other people because this would kind of defeat the purpose of being totally free in what you want to do. So we're not taking clients in that sense, but we're basically covering the whole value chain from developing our own mobile app ideas to having them developed and then putting them on the App Store and marketing them ourselves. And the way we do that, or the business model that we have, is what I might call platform strategy, or in the mobile app world, it's often called reskinning. What that means is we're focusing on building platforms or app frameworks. So when we're building something, we want to do something that we can use as many times as possible and not only once for one app. So just to give you an example, for example, if we develop a certain type of game, we would then probably try to use that game as a zombie game and a police game and a knights game and a Christmas game. Okay, so fast forward to end of 2014. At that point of time, we had built over 600 apps. We have them live on the App Store. We had over 16 million total app downloads. In 2014, we had our first 6-figure revenue year at a whopping 90% profit margin. And all the while, I was 13 weeks on vacation in 2014. And I want to explain to you how I did it, or how we did it. And I call this the 8 steps from 0 to 6 figures. First step, just starting. Many of you raised your hands about already being entrepreneurs. That means many of you didn't. And especially for those who didn't, at some point of time, the most important thing is to just get started. Because if you don't get started, you're just never going to do it. And I know that if you're sitting here, you're probably thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. And I know what the fears are about just starting, because we had them ourselves. It's like fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of, or I would say like looking at other companies who are doing what you want to do and thinking, I could never do that. Like they're so advanced. They have 500 apps. Like how could I ever do that? How could I ever get started in the app business? And what I want to show you, and I want to kick this off with a quote by T. Harv Eker, which is, every master was once a disaster. I want to show you that in the beginning, most people just suck and they're disasters in the beginning. And I want to show you how much of a disaster we were. So, our first app that we did in June of 2012, it was called Liebessprüche, meaning love quotes in English. And the idea was to send cheesy love quotes to other people. The app was launched in 2012, and the cost of developing that on an outsourcing platform was about $150 US. It was developed, I think, within 1 week by a Vietnamese guy. And so let me show you our wireframes, let's call them like that. It was just us scribbling something onto the paper, how we wanted this app to look like. And this was the first version of our app, and you can see it's pretty hideous. So that's how we got started. And let's look at what happened to this app. There were a couple of updates, but it doesn't look that different right now. But the results of this app, at some point of time, about 1.5 years ago, it was number 6 in the German App Store overall. It has over 240,000 downloads, and the revenue from this app is about $12,000 so far. So I just want to encourage you to get started. And it doesn't matter that you're a disaster in the beginning. Okay, step number 2, hustling on the side. When we started, we still both had corporate jobs, so what we had to do was working on the evenings, working on the weekends, and that was pretty tough. And it took us about 9 months before we quit our jobs, and it was a really tough time. And I think you have to do that, because most of you start off like this. You have corporate jobs and you want to become entrepreneurs, and so that's what it takes. Step number 3, learning, iterating, improving. In the beginning, we were really bad, but the most important step, or the steps that we took, was improving with every app that we did. Learning along the way, iterating so many times, and improving, always improving. And that's how we advanced. And then step number 4 was finding our business model. Because when we started with apps, we had no idea that our strategy or business model was going to be this platform strategy or this reskinning, trying to build huge quantities of apps. We just had this one idea about the love quotes. And so I think the really important point about this is, if you don't start and if you don't iterate, you're not going to find your business model. And probably if you have a business idea right now, and if you follow up on that, that's probably not going to be your business model in the end. So I just want to encourage you, especially those of you who haven't started, to get started, to iterate, and then so many things will change, but again, you have to start. Step number 5 for us was going pro. And by going pro, I mean that we saw the potential in this business. We monetized our apps. We were earning some money. I think at the point of time when we were quitting our jobs, it was something around $1,000, $2,000 per month for the two of us together, which obviously wasn't enough to finance our living. But we knew that the App Store was developing super rapidly, and that if we didn't quit our jobs, we were not gonna catch up, and we were not gonna make this a real business. So at some point of time, it was a super hard decision, but we had to go pro at some point. And then step number 6, diversifying and testing. In this kind of business that we're doing, which is basically a business that is dependent on another platform, especially the Apple App Store, you have to try and diversify as much as possible. Because there are certain bottlenecks or players, and if you have a problem with them, then your whole business could go down the drain. So what we did is we tried to diversify in as many aspects as possible, meaning developing for different operating systems, for different screen sizes, using as many advertising networks as possible, all these kinds of things. And we tested again and again, just to stay agile and to stay ahead of the curve. Step number 7, and this speaks again very much to the Tim Ferriss idea and what he lays out in the 4-Hour Workweek, is outsourcing and automating. understand that we were outsourcing from the very beginning because we had zero programming experience. So our first app was already developed by someone else that we found on an outsourcing platform. And at that point of time that we wanted to scale our business, we knew that we had to go further with this automation and outsourcing idea. So the first step was trying to identify all the non-crucial repetitive tasks in our business, and then thinking about whether we could automate these tasks. Meaning either buying software or tools that could do what we wanted to do or building them ourselves. So for example, we built a couple of tools in Excel with Excel macros that do amazing stuff, just to automate processes that we had to do again and again. And for everything that we couldn't automate, we tried to outsource this as much as possible. And so what we did was we posted liberally on freelancer platforms for all kinds of jobs, from designing, programming, doing virtual assistant tasks for us. And by liberally mean you can post a job there and you don't even have to hire the person if you don't want to. You can basically just do it to check it out. So maybe speaking a little bit more to those of you who already have a business and who are interested in that, when you use these platforms, we developed a small hack, I would call it, that we used in order to kind of like build our own HR or recruiting system for freelancers. Meaning that we posted a lot of jobs on different freelancer sites, and then what usually happens is they put in their information, but usually they have like a copy and paste text that they give you, which they put into all the posts. And so it becomes really difficult for you to find out like who should I hire, do they meet my criteria. So what we did is within the post we actually directed the people through to a Google form. And that Google form was kind of our recruiting system, and we asked them all kinds of questions on this forum, especially our knockout criteria. So if you wanted to hire a developer who is available for at least 20 hours per week, you would ask, for example, how many hours per week are you available maximum? And you get this really nice handy Google spreadsheet with all the answers from all the people, and then you can immediately delete all the people that don't meet your knockout criteria, which is what you couldn't do on these freelancer platforms. You can also aggregate across platforms, so you could send people from like freelancer.com and guru.com to the same forum. And also, one thing that is really handy, most of the people don't even read your job description properly, so we always hit some kind of keyword. So for example, in job posting, it would say the keyword is frog, and then in this form you can ask, okay, what's the code word? And if they don't even get the frog part right, you probably don't want to hire them in the first place. So we ended up with lots of interesting candidates, and what we did was we prepared standardized test tasks for them that we could give them, so that they would we could just test their reliability and see if they could come up with something back to us within 24 hours. And so this is how we hired a lot of people. Coming back to the last of the 8 steps, that's investing and connecting. And I think that's a really important part, especially if you're further along your business, investing in software, in courses, and then connecting. So I think it's great that all of you guys are here, because in the end, we couldn't be where we are right now if we hadn't connected to other app entrepreneurs across the globe. And we exchanged ideas with them. We were in Skype calls, mastermind groups, and they gave us so much knowledge. So I think the key to success at some point is going to be connecting and networking. All right, so those are my 8 steps. And just to wrap this up more or less, what I want to do is generalize the principle of our business model a little bit more, and maybe give those of you a business idea who haven't got a business yet, or who haven't got a business idea yet. Because what we did basically is we built a business on the back of another platform, especially the Apple App Store. And I think there are many of these platforms out there, and if you're looking for a business idea, you can just try and find them. So these could be already really large, have lots of traffic, already emerging. And if you're asking, okay, what are these platforms? These are some examples. There are many of them out there. Like Amazon, eBay, Kickstarter, Apple App Store, Facebook, Etsy, Groupon, Airbnb. I think these are all amazing platforms where that you can build businesses on. And so what you would want to do is look at these platforms that you're interested in, trying to find sub-market or niches or communities that are already on these platforms, and you want to serve them. And the great thing about these platforms is they have the traffic, so you don't have to worry about that, about the traffic and the marketing in the beginning. Plus, they have all the credit card information from the customers, so you don't have to worry about that either. So finding these sub-market niches, and then just trying to build your minimum viable product really, really quickly through outsourcing. There are lots of these platforms out there if you want to have digital goods or if you want to have physical goods even. And I think this is a really great way to test business ideas pretty quickly and to just get going. And so for those of you who don't have a business yet, if you find this interesting, maybe as a little homework, I would encourage you to think about what kind of platforms have I used in the past and that I find really interesting, maybe which ones are new, what kind of topics, submarkets, niches am I interested in, and then also, so what kind of product could I build in order to serve them? And then just post a posting on, for example, freelancer.com. It doesn't cost you anything, you don't have to hire anybody. But if you're like someone who is interested in sports and you think I could maybe get into Kindle ebooks on Amazon, because that's a great platform and that's a great submarket, why don't you post, okay, who can write me a fitness ebook? And you'll see that probably someone's going to do it for $50. And why don't you test it? And that could become a real business. All right, so thank you for listening so far. I'm going to be open to questions. If you want to follow up with me, I'm going to stick around. Also, that's my email address, johannes@worklifehero.com. And also, worklifehero.com, that's a blog that I just recently started. If you're interested in topics like finding more time, beating procrastination, getting work done that matters, you can check it out. And also on this website, worklifehero.com/4HWW, I'm going to put some resources from this talk, like the presentation and a couple of links and a link to the Google form that I mentioned. So check it out. Any questions for Johannes? Oh, shall I choose? Yeah, Matteo.
Outsourcing platforms, which one works best?
I think many of them are really good. For us, we use mostly freelancer.com and guru.com. I wouldn't even be able to tell you which ones work best because they're all pretty similar. And then sometimes I would even encourage you to use all of them at the same time. Freelancer.com, guru.com, elance.com.
How much did you spend in the early stages on outsourcing and paying people?
You mean in general or per hour? Or
especially in the early stages when you didn't have so much money coming in from your business yet.
Well, we hardly spend anything. I can tell you that for the Apple App Store, what you need is a MacBook to work. And so our first investment was just having these computers in the first place. And those $150 was everything that we needed to get started, plus $99 for a 1-year registration for the Apple App Store. But that was really it. And it was really only a couple of $100s to get started. And I mean, the App Store, especially in the app market, has developed so much, you don't even have to hire programmers anymore. There are lots of marketplaces where you can buy templates, source code templates, and you can get those for starting from $20 to something like 300, 400. And you're like fully self-sufficient with these and can get started. Yes, Joseph.
You used a lot of high traffic platforms, but they are all very different.
Yes.
So how did you use them?
Actually, we only used 1 or 2 high traffic platforms, which was the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. So those were our platforms, and the advantage was that we could put our mobile apps on these platforms, and there were already lots of people just searching organically for different topics, like, let's say, zombie adventure runner game or whatever. And so the other ones that I mentioned, like Amazon, eBay, and so on, those were just examples for other platforms that I think could be really useful to start businesses on. So we didn't use them at all. Yes.
One crucial part of your business success was developing a lot of ideas. I'm interested in how did you go about in the beginning to find a lot of ideas? How many ideas did you develop in a week on average, and how many of those did you pick for apps?
Okay, so the first ideas that we developed were kind of random, I would even say. Like the love quotes idea, that was something that I guess it came into our mind more or less randomly, and we tried to validate ideas in the beginning by going to the Google Keyword Planner and then seeing how many searches came up for different products. I think that's something that you guys regularly do for websites. So Google has this tool, the Keyword Planner, and you can check out different search terms, like for example, love quotes. What we did was we found out that in Germany, actually, it's a pretty big search term. And if you looked at it on the App Store, there were only 2 apps at the time covering this topic. So in the beginning, it was always having an idea and then trying to validate it by going through this process of looking through at the Google Keyword Planner and then the App Store. And so our idea process then became something when we were researching the App Store much more, we were looking much more at competition. So in the beginning, it was really individual apps until we developed this business model of going high volume. And when we started going high volume, it's super easy to look at your competition and see what others are doing. So on the App Store, if you look at new games, top games, something like that, you could find tons of zombie games and Christmas games and whatever. If you were doing the same strategy for Amazon, you would probably look at the bestseller rankings on the Kindle ebooks and see what is selling there. If you were going to be on Etsy, you could probably see like most search for items or something like that. So it's always, you can already look at the platform, see what's already happening there. And I think if there is competition, that's a good sign. So you want to go where there's competition because that's probably what people are interested in and where other people are making money. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much. The second part basically was, what I'm interested in is like the day-to-day process of how do you go about to develop ideas. Like, did you spend a lot of time on the idea development or more on the implementation?
We spent more time on the implementation because we knew that we were going to implement a lot of ideas. So we didn't go through 100 ideas in order to pick one, but we pretty much, if we had 100 ideas, we were probably implementing 90 of them. So I think especially if you find a business where you can produce products with really low investment, that's like a really good strategy, basically going with your gut and doing only really simple validations and looking at the competition, looking at what's already out there and not trying to be super innovative. Yeah.
How are you marketing your apps?
We're only marketing our apps through organic search traffic on the App Store. So that means more or less we're not doing any marketing other than App Store optimization. So that's like the search engine optimization of the App Store where you would try to find really nice icons, screenshots, keywords, and titles. That's basically the most important parts. Yeah?
How do you do the monetization of it?
There are a couple of different strategies that you can do on the App Store to monetize your apps. The 3 major ones are you have paid apps, you have in-app purchases within the app, or you have advertising. We actually do 90% of our revenue through advertising. Because the barrier to spending money on the App Store is really, really high. I mean, most people just don't spend any money at all. So advertising really works better for us.
Can you still remember your inner monologue after putting up the Liebesprüche app? So what was your mental state? Because you observed that it's hideous.
Yeah, that was my mental state. I thought, hopefully no one's going to find out about this. Especially not at my company. I mean, it was pretty tough, really. I think if you do that kind of thing and you put yourself out there and you ship a product and that's something that people can potentially find under your name and associate you with that can be pretty scary, and it was. But then the good thing was, with every additional app, it became more natural.
Last question. Nobody has one.
Yeah.
When you launch your first app, like he was referring to, were you already this conscious about the whole process? Were you already saying, well, I'll put it out there and then over time I'll iterate? Or is this the wisdom that came afterwards, basically?
That's the wisdom that came afterwards.
Okay.
Like we had no idea what we were doing, how we were monetizing. We pretty much only thought, okay, this App Store thing is pretty cool. Why don't we try and put an app out there and let's see what happens. And then all the rest came later.
I have one quick question, actually.
Yeah.
What was your average cost per app as you're prototyping? Like, what's the average initial cost for one app?
In the beginning, if you develop an app on these outsourcing platforms, for us it was something like $150 actually. And then if you can use the same app framework for multiple apps and you only change the design or something like that, obviously that decreases. But if you have a more complicated idea, you can easily spend a couple of hundred, even a couple of $1,000s. I would probably not encourage anyone to do that, but try to stay as minimal as possible.